Once upon a time, arena shooters were the staple of PC gaming. Head back to 1999 and Quake 3 Arena and Unreal Tournament were going head to head in a straight up arena shooter fight to the death. Back then, games like Battlegrounds, Dota, League of Legends, the sort of games that dominate the PC gaming scene right now, didn't really exist in the mainstream. Battlefield 1942 didn't release until a few years later, in 2002, but the behemoth that is now Counter-Strike would officially release in the year 2000. The first Dota game released in 2003, but it wasn't anywhere near as mainstream as the game is today. When I was in school, the main games that I would play were Counter-Strike and Quake. On LAN, Unreal Tournament Instagib was the order of the day. If you played PC games back then, you almost certainly played or heard of Quake and Unreal Tournament. Half-Life Deathmatch also became a really big thing back in the day. A lot of players started playing PC games simply because of those titles. Fast forward to today, and we live in an era where there are thousands upon thousands of games on PC. We don't live in a time where games are basic anymore. We've got MOBAs, racing simulations, survival games, battle royale games. We even have games when you can simulate being a car mechanic or a farm worker. The point is that there are so many games to choose from, a choice that just wasn't there back in 2000, and you were really limited by what you could play. So what you played was what was available. And generally speaking, if you were into games with guns, that was lots of different arena shooters. Very few game franchises can last over a 10-year period. Counter-Strike is one of those examples. It's gone through a few versions, but it still grips people even today. Arena shooters, however, have fallen off. That being said, Epic are working on an Unreal Tournament game, and a new Quake game being developed by Bethesda Studios is also in the pipeline. And then of course you've got new games like Lawbreakers, which you're seeing here, and that's just released, but it's not done so well in terms of numbers. Right now for Lawbreakers, there's only 555 people playing the game on PC, with a 24-hour peak of 1,550. Its all-time peak at the moment was only 7,000, which for a brand new game on Steam, honestly, is pretty bad. To put that into perspective, it isn't even on the top 100 played games on Steam. Now, unfortunately, we don't have PlayStation 4 numbers yet, because the game came out on PS4 as well, but I think it's safe to say that the buzz for the game has already died down. Now let me just say that numbers don't mean everything. Cliff Bleszinski, who's the founder of Bosky, they're the people that make Lawbreakers, said himself that he wasn't bothered and insisted that it's a marathon, not a sprint. And of course, the game released on PS4 like I said, and we don't know the player base numbers there. But no matter the way you shape it, it's definitely not a great start for the game based on the PC numbers, and also based on viewers on Twitch and YouTube, which is important nowadays, and I think it's a big shame because honestly, it's a really good game. I think it's well made, it looks great, it's a lot of fun to play, it runs fantastic on PC, all the options are there. There's no doubt that this is a great arena shooter. I mean, look at the reviews, it's had really good reviews all across the board. But I honestly think that players nowadays are so spoilt for choice when it comes to games that arena shooters just don't have an audience anymore, and they can become very tiresome for a lot of people. I for one can't really take those sort of games for much more than a few hours anymore, but 10 years ago I could play Quake 3 Arena or Unreal Tournament all day. But as I said, that's what was available back then and that's what everyone was playing, so I just did it. Times, I suppose, just change. Of course, there are still players who will play Lawbreakers and Quake Champions as their main games, and that's absolutely fine, they're great games, but if you look at the play numbers, it's apparent that those people are in a very small minority. You could say that some of the reason for Lawbreakers' poor reception on PC is perhaps a poor marketing campaign. Maybe they didn't do a good enough job getting the message out to the masses exactly what their game was. Cliff, even by his own admission, said that he wished he wouldn't have allowed streaming of the alpha because he felt that it showed the game off in a much too early state, and honestly, I tend to agree. The progress made between the alpha and the main release is very significant. Lots of Twitch streamers and YouTubers, including myself, showed off the game during alpha, and you have to assume that some people will have seen that footage and made a judgment, even if it's not the final version of the game. In the gaming industry, I really believe that first impressions are everything now. But when I think about it, I can't recall an arena shooter in the past 5 years that's done very well. If you consider Overwatch, for example, to be an arena shooter, that would be the one exception, but I'm not sure that I really class it as an arena shooter myself. Overwatch is much more of a team-based multiplayer shooter. The most comparable thing to it, I think, is Team Fortress 2. When I watch people playing it and I play it myself, it doesn't feel or look like a classic arena shooter. And Blizzard just ooze quality, and when they first showed off the game and went, here you go, everyone just try out the beta, it was honestly already like a fully polished game. And of course Blizzard and Activision together, they've got the might of their companies to push forward the marketing campaign, and they did an insane job of getting the game out there, mixing it with their cinematic YouTube videos detailing the lore. The characters and the story are very strong in Overwatch, and I know some people that don't even play Overwatch that just kind of like the characters and enjoy learning about their stories and watching the cinematics. That's how strong that IP is at the moment. And what about a game like Battleborn? I mean, if you remember the launch of that, while not an arena shooter again, in fact it was more of a MOBA type game, I think that 2K did a poor job of marketing the game there. It released almost under the radar and the player base plummeted faster than it was gained. And the reason that I mentioned Battleborn is because its creator Gearbox Software is developing a new game, a 1 vs 1 first-person competitive shooter that combines card-based elements. So let's just go into that into more detail for a second. A competitive first-person shooter that combines the action of a fast-paced 1 vs 1 first-person combat with the metagame strategy of a collectible card game. Now maybe I could be really wrong here and this could be the next big thing, I doubt it. Hearthstone for the FPS gamer, maybe. But my gut tells me that it just isn't going to take off, and I think you can already see that from the concept. The era of 1v1 arena FPS games just isn't there anymore, there just isn't the interest. I'll happily be proven wrong though, and in fairness, we need to see exactly how this game will operate before giving it a full judgment. I can't really say that it won't work without seeing it, but my initial reaction was, who actually wants to play a game like that? I know I personally don't, and I'm sure that there are some people out there who think, hey, that's a cool idea. But once again, I think they're a very, very small minority, and the concept of the game, I just can't see it taking off before it's even launched. And I'm not trying to squash creativity here. I think it's cool that designers are trying out new ideas and mashing different genres together. But you've always got to think about it from a business perspective, that is this game actually going to sell? Is there an audience for it? I think to understand why arena shooters just don't have the popularity that they once did, you have to see the way that not only games have developed, but also the social side of gaming. 10 to 15 years ago, arena shooters were all based around showing off an individual's amazing skill, whereas today's most popular games are far much more team-based. Games like Battlefield came along and started to show off large-scale battles between 64 players with squads of 5 working together for a larger goal. Counter-Strike, of course, which we've mentioned, and then newer games like Rainbow Six Siege provided small maps where team play was a requirement to win. Sure, games like Quake and Unreal Tournament had team-based game modes, but it was the duels that were always the most popular. These days, platforms like Steam, TeamSpeak, Twitter, Discord, they all provide a way to meet new people and make playing with others easier. For me and many others, it's far more enjoyable to play a game with 2, 3 or maybe 4 other people in, let's say, a game of Battlegrounds or Battlefield, and have moments of fast-paced gameplay, but also moments where you can chill and relax and talk. I find the most enjoyment in games when I can focus up when it's needed, but also just relax and chat with friends at the same time. Battlegrounds and Battlefield, for instance, provide that. Even in a game like Rainbow Six Siege, when you're in the planning phase, whether you're using a drone to scout around, you could be chatting with your mates about the latest episode of Game of Thrones or whatever it was that you did at work today, I don't know, but there's always some space to kind of chill, relax and be sociable. Now on the flip side to that, games like Quake, Unreal and Lawbreakers are just so fast-paced and intense that they need much more of your attention. You have to be moving constantly, outthinking your opponent, focused constantly, aiming consistently all of the time, and I guess that level of focus just isn't what I personally enjoy anymore, and I imagine that's the same for a lot of other people. Games have moved on. I think we're in a time where gaming has become much more of a sociable event, and winning as a team and creating those awesome and funny moments is much more enjoyable with friends than playing the game on your own. Those moments when you're playing in a competitive game with a buddy, with a squad of 4, a squad of 5, and you come across an obstacle, a situation, you think about it, you communicate, you use tactics, and together you overcome whatever that obstacle is and then go on to the next obstacle or to win the game. It just seems so much more satisfying that way. Arena shooters just don't give you that, and I think that's what the majority of the gamers are looking for nowadays. Going back to Lawbreakers though, I think there's still a chance for it. Originally, it was meant to be a free-to-play game, but that model changed and instead it moved to a paid game. To Lawbreakers' credit, it's only $30. They didn't charge the full normal $60 asking price for a multiplayer-only AAA game, and that may have helped improve the quality of the game. It's hard to say really, but it's possible it would see an improvement in its player base if it moved back to free to play. Of course, people who have paid for the game, well, they certainly wouldn't be too pleased with that. At the very least, free weekends should be a top priority for the game right now to get people involved in it again, get people playing it, and hopefully some people would fall in love. I'm also not saying that Lawbreakers doesn't have a team element completely. It does, because there is a medic class and you can work together to kind of capture the ball in certain game modes, but it's so fast-paced nature that it just doesn't keep my attention, and it doesn't really require that much teamwork in my opinion. Now of course, Battlegrounds is easily the biggest game around right now, and while Battle Royale games aren't new, lots of indie devs try to make them. None have got anywhere near the level of success that Battlegrounds has in terms of overall quality and addictiveness. I mean, 500,000 people playing it right now, 8 million copies sold whilst I'm making this video. That's just crazy, and it's beaten only by Dota 2 on the top 100, and in fact ahead of CSGO now sometimes. And I think that's a great indication of what a lot of gamers want nowadays, and that's team-based games where they can be sociable and the goal is simple, but how you get to that goal is completely up to you, and everything in between is the player's choice. And you know what, maybe in 5 years time we'll be looking back and saying, hey, Battle Royale games have had their day, and there'll be a new type of game that we're all in love with. All I know is that my days of playing arena shooters for hours and hours upon end are long gone. So that's all for today guys. Do let me know your opinion down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, a thumbs down. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you in the next one.